Please rewind this cassette.
はいこれ明日私の誕生日なの。もちろんいらしてくださいますわね。ひどい。
お前を殺す。
So the first part of the season, okay, until you get to the long night, which is, I think, in a lot of ways, just a bad episode with a few good moments. But we already went over some of the points. Several characters in the sequence are attacked by hordes of zombies. They never die. They just cut away or they get saved last minute. There's this weird quiet sequence with Arya Stark that feels like it's out of Walking Dead, even though we saw hordes of zombies running in earlier. What the fuck? All sorts of stuff like that happened throughout this episode. The strategy to fight the walkers was horrible. There hasn't been a good strategy in a battle, military strategy in the show for years now, maybe since the Robb Stark era. So all of that just culminated in a massive disappointment. But everyone talked about this episode enough. There's nothing really to add to it. It was a sign of things getting worse. And the hope is like, okay, well, maybe not all the White Walker stuff's wrapped up. Maybe there's more story. Then we got The Last of the Starks, which was another fucking disaster. In many ways, an even worse episode than The Long Night. Because this episode was the one where it's like, okay, you guys have to bounce back. And they get this long, drawn-out party scene, this sex comedy with all the actors. And it's just long first 40 minutes where nothing's happening. And then you get this rushed pacing in the second half once Euron kills one of Dany's dragons. And Missandei gets taken hostage. And then they kill her at the end. It feels like 3 episodes worth of shit happening in like the last 25 minutes. So this continues that thing of rushing the storyline. Because Dan and Dave didn't want to spend the time to flesh this stuff out. It was going to take a long time, especially Dany going evil. They were like, hell, we just have to bam, 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 bam. Let's hit these plot points. And that was a huge issue with season 7. I don't think it affected season 6 too much. I think the 10 episodes helped that. But season 7, it was bad. And then I was hoping with season 8, they were leaving that a little bit with the first 2 episodes staying at Winterfell. And then unfortunately, the second half went right back to season 7, where just time and geography, none of it mattered anymore. It was just an immediacy of things happening. And it's like they were trying to go for shock value. You know, like, well, we're gonna kill people. We're gonna kill another dragon. It's all gonna be it's gonna be exciting. It's gonna be like the old days. But the problem was it's just none of it felt earned. The fact that Dany didn't send a scouting party out before a dragon got killed just seemed silly and ridiculous. How accurate those scorpions were in that sequence, and then they're completely pointless in the bells. All of this was set up to just put Dany at her lowest moment possible. And then in the bells, she gets to come back and just, kill everybody. But she did all that damage with one dragon and took out all of those scorpions with one dragon in the bells. Yet before that, it's shown that the scorpions are pretty goddamn effective against the dragons in Season 7 and in Season 8. Now all of a sudden she can just dodge them like nothing. She can blow Euron's navy up. I mean, it's not that I wanted a big battle and I wanted to see the Golden Company fight or that I wanted to see more stuff with Euron. It's just I wanted Dany to do clever things to beat them. I didn't want it to just be, now all of a sudden Drogon's OP and he can just take out everybody and it doesn't matter. It would have been more interesting had Dany come up with a plan to strategically take out Euron's navy and to trick the Golden Company. It would have been nice once again if somebody had used some strategy so there was some logic to it. Because all I'm thinking during this is like, okay, well, the dragons seem weaker before, now they're stronger, and it goes back and forth. Drogon's fire now just causes explosions. He just, shoots some fire at a building and it fucking explodes. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, this dragon porn, this obsession with the dragons. The Bells is maybe the most egregious episode of all of the series in a lot of ways, even though it does have some beautiful spectacle and some nice moments. I do like the stuff with the Hound. It just felt so hollow. it was this big, expensive blockbuster episode, and it felt completely hollow because Dan and Dave once again were just hitting plot points. Like, all right, Clegane Bowl has to happen. Arya has to change her mind again on who she is. Cersei has to learn a lesson that she's not going to win this one. All right, Dany has to go evil from the sound of the bells. Like, why didn't you just kill off her dragon during this sequence? Or somebody came up with this idea. I'm not taking credit for this. That she's about to accept the surrender, and then one of the Lannister soldiers kills Grey Worm, and then she goes crazy. Even that would have made more sense. But at the time when she goes mad queen on everybody, it's like, well, you don't really have good motivation for that. I get you going to kill Cersei. I think she should have just flown right to the Red Keep and just blown Cersei the fuck up, and then taken everyone else hostage. Instead, she just goes full Mad Queen, and then we spend like 30 minutes seeing dragon destruction porn and Arya running around. I mean, it was entertaining in a very shallow way, a very vapid way. And I just couldn't believe it. This is stuff that, it's funny, it's things that I thought I wanted, and then once I actually got them, I realized I didn't want any of it. Especially, I thought about that chick in The Matrix when she's like,
not like this. Not like this.
That's how I felt during this. The Bells and the Long Night are going to probably be the most discussed episodes as time goes on, because they are the ones where big events happened, where Cersei finally lost and the White Walkers got taken out. So they're huge episodes. The human storyline gets wrapped up, and the fantastical storyline gets wrapped up. And just thinking about how much happened in those 3 episodes there, from the Long Night to the Bells, and how all of it ended up just ringing so hollow and just ruining Dany's character. Because people say, well, you haven't been paying attention. She's been evil from the beginning. I mean, remember when she used to just burn people, and she had people get eaten by her dragons, and she killed people? I also remember when she locked her dragons up because they were killing people, and she didn't want them to keep harming people. I also remember that stuff. I also remember her freeing thousands of slaves. I also remember her doing a lot of good. People always say, like, oh, she killed her brother. Well, her brother was a piece of shit. I don't have any problem with her killing her brother. Then they're like, oh, well, she did some cruel things. I don't think she did anything that cruel compared to stuff that other characters have done. I think, yeah, I mean, some of it was a little cold-blooded, but it's war. She's trying to take over. I don't think Dany's that crazy. I mean, I'm kind of getting sick of this argument that Dany was crazy the whole time. She did do things that were questionable, but she was never shown as a full-blown crazy person. Even when she took out the heads of Dothraki and then burned them all down and came out of the fire, even then she didn't come off that crazy, in my opinion. Once again, a lot of those things make sense. Why wouldn't she kill those guys and take their army? Why wouldn't she do that? That just seems, she's just being smart. People seem to look at this as evil, even though she's just doing things that make sense to give herself more, I don't know, more power, more leverage in life, in this world. She's going to need an army. She's going to need support. She's going to need to put some fear in people if she wants to go to Westeros and take over. So I don't agree that the whole Dany thing's been there the whole time. I don't think it was. I think there was elements of it. And then this last 2 seasons were the seasons they really needed to flesh it out. Instead, what we got was a soap opera storyline where the Stark sisters are like, we don't like Dany, she's a bitch. And then she's like, well, I don't like your sisters, love me, fuck me. I don't want to fuck you, you're my aunt. No, I don't want to fuck you. I don't want to fuck my aunt. Fuck me, I'm your aunt. Fuck me, fuck me. No, I don't want to. I love my family. Oh, and I'm a Targaryen, I'm gonna go tell my family. Oh, you told us you're a Targaryen? Well, fuck her, man. You're the king now. Let's fucking take this evil bitch out. Yeah, but she saved all of us. She actually came here and helped us. And no, Arya killed the Night King. Yeah, but she lost her dragons and her soldiers.
Arya's the one that killed the Night King.
Arya, I need your help. Well, Jon, I understand you, but I don't like her either because she's a bitch. And she kills people even though I kill people. And I'm a murderer, but she's a murderer. She even says in the last episode, she's like,
I know a killer when I see one.
Really, Arya? As if you couldn't tell when she was burning down a city and everyone saw it? Didn't that kind of give away that she was killing people, Arya? I don't know. I thank you for giving us that information. I know a murderer when I see one. Yeah, it just became just a bunch of cat fighting, you know? The bitches going at each other, a bunch of fucking shitty looks at each other. There's so many scenes in the season where Danny and Sansa are looking at each other like, yo, fuck you, cunt. Oh, you want to start some shit with me, ho? You know, where's the dragons now? I don't see the dragons now. You know, just like these, I remember a comment like,
What do dragons eat, anyway?
Whatever they want.
it's like, okay, Sansa, sorry for asking a question that made sense. She's like, yeah, how are we supposed to feed all your men and feed these dragons? And then Danny's like, don't you be asking about my dragons and my men. They can eat whatever they want, sister. I mean, what the fuck? Everyone says, oh, it's been there from the beginning, so this is where you wanted it to end up. This is the complex, grand story of Game of Thrones and Danny's tragedy is that she just ends up having some petty, bitchy fights with other women. And then eventually, because she does what she says she was going to do, for the most part, which is, take over King's Landing, any means necessary. And then John's all like, you know what, I gotta kill her now, because she's evil. And she's gonna take over the world. It's like, well, didn't you want her to take over the world? Isn't that the idea? And they keep talking about breaking the fucking wheel. One conversation they had in season 6 about breaking the wheel. No, season 5 about breaking the wheel turns into the biggest conversation piece in the last episode. There's like a dozen moments. Hopefully I can make a montage here. Terrible Lizard, roll the montage of people talking about the wheel.
I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break the wheel.
Avar! Valar! Rinjar! Tole Gregovobotis! Grevi in Noma Progella!
We do it together. We break the wheel together.
That is the wheel our queen wanted to break.
It's a beautiful dream. Stopping the wheel.
The wheel. Oh my god. It's like, guys, that worked for one conversation. That was fun one time, I'm going to break the wheel in Hardhome. Now it's just like, I guess they think it's that iconic. They kept repeating dialogue throughout this whole fucking season. They kept bringing up lines that were said years ago. Like, you're supposed to be like, oh man, cool reference. It's not like winter is coming. That was always really cool because it was coming. It kept reminding you of the threat. Fuck this shit, man. I could go through clips. I could break down how everyone's saying that Danny was always evil and this is organically where the stories is going. I could show you how that's all bullshit. But basically, if you think that, there's no reason to discuss it. Also, if you do think that's what they were setting up the whole time, can you at least be open-minded enough to see how we didn't like how once they actually got there, it didn't work? Maybe you're right and they were setting it up, but could you at least see that there's problems with the execution in these episodes to actually get to this point, and it wasn't that compelling, even though Emil Clark for the first time in maybe since season 3 was actually trying to fucking act?
If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.
Alright, fuck it, let's talk about the last episode, the Iron Throne. Oh my god, and that Iron Throne ended up being a toilet filled with shit that was the scripts for this season. I mean, this was a disaster. One of the worst finales to a show ever. By far. I mean, why do you spend the first fucking 10 minutes with Tyrion walking around, looking at the destruction, being like, oh my god, she killed so many people, when we already know that it's a waste of time. I don't need to live in that moment anymore. I got it. I got it before, guys. And then he goes to find the dead bodies of Cersei and Jaime, who are covered in all these rocks and boulders, right? They collapsed on them, and he moves some rocks off, and they look beautiful. They don't look like they were crushed at all. I'm not gonna say I'm an expert here, but I'm pretty sure if that happened, you would be all smashed up. Your face would be smashed in. You would have broken several bones. You would look pretty fucked up. They look like they just put some light makeup on them and they have them laying there together. Also, what a horrible death for Jaime and Cersei. What a terrible way to wrap up Jaime's character arc. Jaime was one of my favorite characters. He was one of the only characters and actors on the show I still think had an interesting storyline going over season 6 and 7. And then they just ruined all of that in season 8, him going back to Cersei and dying the way he did. Fucking disaster. What a betrayal. Yeah, they just die that way. I mean, it's not that I'm saying it needed to be more epic. It just, wow, they really do, fade away instead of burning out, to put it that way. And then to spend all that time for Tyrion looking for them and then finding them and their bodies are perfect like that. It's not even a grotesque image. Just to have the scene where Tyrion's crying over them. It just felt pointless. And that really set the tone for this episode. So much pointless stuff. Dany walking and like, look, there's a cool shot with the dragon wings, man. It's like she has wings. Go buy this shit at Hot Topic, motherfuckers. We're geniuses. Alright, Dan and Dave. Good for you guys. The indulgence in all of this. And once again, how fast everything was. All of a sudden, Drogon's there, Grey Worm's there with Jon. Then Tyrion, like, he throws down his, his thing for being the hand, and it falls, and it's this big epic shot. It's like, it doesn't need to be this big epic grandiose thing. And then all of a sudden, Grey Worm and Jon are like in the same location again. It's like, wait, didn't he just leave Grey Worm like 5 minutes ago while Grey Worm was killing soldiers? And now they're over here? Alright, and then Dany's like, come on, fuck me again. Will you fuck me finally? I'm horny, dude. I just killed a bunch of people. Let's fuck on top of my dragon, baby. Who cares if I'm your aunt? And then Jon kills Dany, which is horrible, because it really doesn't make any sense. Then Drogon shows up, and he burns down the Iron Throne in one of the funniest scenes ever. I mean, also, can I bring up Qyburn real quick? What a terrible death for Qyburn.
Sir Gregor, I command you.
Obey your queen, Sir Gregor.
I kind of like that his Frankenstein monster kills him, but once again, what was going on with that guy? We'll never know. It's like the High Sparrow. It's like, what was going on with that guy? We don't know. None of it matters. They just have a big death scene, and all of the plot and stuff that was getting set up with them just gets thrown out the fucking window. Do you remember when characters die, it used to be the result of plot lines? Like when Tywin gets killed by Tyrion, that was years of story leading up to that moment, where it's like, oh wow, dude, this has really come back to fuck you. All of the things you have done to your son. Robb Stark's death. It's like, yeah, you should have married the Frey girl. Your bad decisions, your youthful arrogance has come back to get you, Ned, in the first season. Now sometimes it's like, all right, well, we need to kill someone off. And they have all these, they have the storyline with this character. So you're like, okay, well, that character's probably going to die in relation to something and a decision they made. But not in Game of Thrones anymore. It's just like, no, let's just kill him off. Qyburn just gets his head smashed in. Oh, fine. Oh, fuck. I'm not even going to talk about Euron. Euron was fucking awful. Euron just wanting to kill Jaime after he swims from the ocean back onto the island of King's Landing. And then for some reason he's like,
I'm the man who killed Jaime Lannister.
He just wants to kill Jaime for some fucking reason, because he's crazy. That's his whole character, is he's crazy. So Jon kills Dany, Drogon burns down the Iron Throne. It doesn't go down on like collateral damage. It's not like Drogon's going crazy and swinging his tail around and then the Iron Throne gets taken out by like, the roof collapsing in on it, even though I don't think there was a roof, but something like that happening. No, he stands there and just burns it and it melts. Like he knows what the Iron Throne represents and that he has to destroy it. Yeah, really subtle stuff there, Dan and Dave. Then they have this council where they have to decide what's going to happen. Grey Worm's like, hey, don't talk. I have the army. I have all the power. Then Tyrion doesn't shut the fuck up, even though Grey Worm told him not to talk. Okay. Then they have Sweet Robin and Dornish people there, all the stuff that could be... This should be an awesome sequence where everyone's talking about what to do with Jon Snow. Also, Jon Snow's the heir to the throne. So Jon Snow should get the throne, or that should at least be in the discussion, him being a Targaryen. But no. And for some reason, Grey Worm's listening to all them. He should be like, listen, I'm going to execute Tyrion. If you guys want to do a trial by combat, Jon versus me, that's fine. We can do something like that. That's justice. Instead, Grey Worm just goes along with the whole king-queen thing. Even though he was angry and bloodthirsty after Missandei died. Yet he's not after Daenerys dies, his fucking queen. He seems like a pretty calm dude after all of this. Like, he doesn't really give a shit. What the fuck, Grey Worm? Like, why don't you care anymore, man? Like, oh, she's dead. Fucker, the bitch is dead. I mean, really, he ended up being one of the most, cold-blooded people of the whole show. At the end, he didn't give a fuck. He's like, I'm just gonna sell off with my men. I don't need to be involved in this stuff anymore. You just killed my queen. Jon gets sent on a vacation to hang out with all of his buddies up north. Good for you, dude. Tyrion becomes the hand of the king again. Bran becomes the king because... How can he even be the king? He's a robot. He's a three-eyed raven. He's not even a person. He's like...
Why do you think I came all this way?
It's like, what, you want to be the king now? Like, what the fuck? When did this all start? Bran being the king... It felt like they just wanted to do a safe thing. Like, let's not pick anyone controversial. Bran's a safe choice. Let's not take any risks here. Or how about we just end kings and queens? And I know they kind of tried to do that with, like, he won't have any kids. And then it's like...
And who has a better story than Bran the Broken?
It's like, no, Bran has one of the worst stories, Tyrion. What the fuck are you talking about? Tyrion used to be such a great character, and in many ways, he's the most annoying... One of the worst characters for me in the last few seasons. Every time he has a speech like this or says something, it's retarded. And this whole final part with him is stupid. This whole council, nobody else chimes in. They all immediately agree that Bran can be the king. There's not really an argument about it. None of it makes any sense. Then you have the goodbye with all the Stark kids and Jon being like, I wasn't there when you needed me to be. You were where you needed to be. Okay. Then Jon goes up north, and it looks like he's abandoning being part of the Night's Watch. So he's actually just going off and going beyond the wall and hanging out with Tormund and all of them. They're probably just going to get drunk and fuck a bunch of women. I mean, really, Jon got a pretty good ending here. So a lot of us were hoping, and there was leaks that said this, that the last scene of the show would be them going beyond the wall and finding a sign that there's still White Walkers out there, that there's still more to come. And I think that ending would have helped this episode a lot if there had been a stinger at the very end. Like, holy shit. Okay, maybe. Then that would have also left it like, okay, everything wasn't wrapped up. So it gives you the sense of the story goes on. We're going to go in a cycle, this generational cycle. Instead, it just ends. It just ends. And great characters like Melisandre and Varys and all these characters just become nothing. And these storylines with these characters and these mysteries and their backstories, all of it becomes nothing. And even Bran, with being the three-eyed raven and his time travel and all of that, nothing. I mean, it ends up being nothing. It's just an episode where people don't talk. The last episode barely has any dialogue in it. I mean, it's a lot of shots of people just standing around or walking. I mean, somebody even did a YouTube video showing this. And then, at the end, you just have Jon Snow riding off. And that's it. I was more positive about this episode in my initial review, because as you could tell, I was just exhausted and I had this sense of melancholy and I was just ready to move on. But in retrospect, looking back on it, thinking about it, it's one of the most pointless, boring filler episodes of the entire show, for the most part, except maybe the death of Dany. And it's the fucking finale. It's the fucking finale to Game of Thrones. And it's... It's just kind of a waste of time. You don't even really have to watch it. You don't even have to watch the damn thing. The biggest crime was just boring. It wasn't even fun in like a cringy way. It was just fucking boring. And that's just the biggest crime they committed, is that they made such a lackluster, laborious, lazy finale that had no energy to it, no pathos. The craftsmanship was even half-assed by Game of Thrones standards. And that Dan and Dave directed it, all of it just puts a bad taste in my mouth. It just sucks. It just sucks that what could have been like, there was something interesting you could have done in the finale. The finale could have saved a lot of things for the season, like what is going to happen with Dany now that she's done this? What is going on with her and Jon's relationship? What's going to happen with the dragon? What are all the lords going to decide on? Who's going to rule the Seven Kingdoms? Are we going to go beyond the Seven Kingdoms? Maybe there still is something with the White Walkers. What about Bran? What does Bran know? Does Bran know more than everyone else, and there's something he's been hiding? They could have really done something crazy, like one big final plot twist that really like opened the show up in new ways. But instead, it just kind of ends, and you're sitting there the whole episode waiting for something interesting to happen. And then when the credits start rolling, you're like, huh. All right, well, that was Game of Thrones. Cool. I mean, the fact that Xena Warrior Princess or Hercules or shows like that ended up being more compelling than Game of Thrones, they didn't have the budget and the special effects and stuff like that. But really, the fact that this became that level of writing, that it got to a point where it's like, well, Spartacus is a better show than this now. You know, that's just hilarious. I mean, I can't believe that's where this ended up. So overall, to wrap it all up, let's get to some kind of finality here, because the problem with doing a full season 8 reviews, you have to talk about too much. You have to talk about the whole show. You have to talk about the behind the scenes stuff. You have to talk about every individual episode, which I did a review for a lot of them. I didn't really talk about the first 2 episodes, but I don't think I needed to. Where does this all end up? What does this say about pop culture and writing and media and where we are? Are we entitled? Did we expect too much? If you love something too long, if you watch something too long, does it eventually become a burden? Does it become a pain? And all of that, all I think is that Game of Thrones is an example of and something Harry Potter didn't do with its series, or something Lord of the Rings didn't have happen initially. It's an example of getting a lot of things right out of the gate. As the first book in the show itself, getting a lot of things right out of the gate, and then not having a full plan, not caring, not nurturing this thing, and then eventually the thing becomes bigger than you. It becomes bigger than you, the creator, George R. R. Martin and Dan and Dave, and bigger than HBO. And then you kind of lose sight of it. It slips out of your hands and goes off and becomes its own thing, like a child growing up and becoming an adult. And then you find out that your kid, that baby that you had that's now a man or a woman that's out there in the world, is a piece of shit, idiotic asshole. And you're like, well, I fucked up. I wish I could go back and get that abortion now. It's that if you love something so much, if you're too attached to something, if you're too inside of something when it's happening, you lose perspective. And when you lose perspective, the stuff will get ahead of you. And then you're just trying to play catch up the rest of the time. And then before you know it, before you know what happens, it's gone. It's too late. You can't do anything about it. And then you have to live with this result. You have to live with the fact that now Game of Thrones is thought of as a show that was great, kind of dropped off a little bit, and then ends horribly. And that's like the consensus across the board. Even the people that used to defend the show hate it now. That's how bad this last season was. I mean, I've met so many normies just in my real life who were like, dude, this show's fucking awful. What happened? That gave a pass to stuff they did in season 5 and 6. And they couldn't even forgive this shit. So it's a message out there to artists out there, or even fans, because we always hear about this toxic fan culture. Is that you have to stay pragmatic, you have to keep things in focus, and don't lose the point, don't lose that core thing that made us love this thing so much. If anyone ever asks why did they do it this way? All I can tell them is that it's human nature.
Looking out across the nighttime, the city winks a sleepless eye. Hear her voice shake my window, sweet seducing sighs, get me out into the nighttime, for walls won't hold me tonight. If this town is just an apple, let me take a bite. If they say why, I tell them that it's human nature. Why does it do me that way?
Now I'd like to take a second and discuss Ghost. I got a lot of flack for bringing up Ghost so much. One, it was a joke that I was bringing up Ghost so much, okay? I thought it was funny to bring up that they were ignoring Ghost. It kind of became a meme over the last few seasons. Where's Ghost? He really did turn into a ghost because I can't fucking see him. Maybe he was never real. And people are like, why do you care so much? One, it was a joke for the most part. But let me bring up why I bring up the ghost thing. It's just another criticism to point out the lack of care that was put into the last few seasons of Game of Thrones. The fact that they didn't put Ghost in there for CGI reasons, yet they spent millions of dollars on this dragons, just means they didn't give a shit. They didn't give enough of a shit to keep Ghost in the story, which was an extension of Jon and who he was, and all of the direwolves were supposed to be that. Now, I know that's much more fleshed out in the book, but if you don't see the cheapness in the direwolf deaths, how cheap it was in the door, just, oh, hey, it jumps into a pile of zombies and then dies in 2 seconds. How the head just gets cut off in season 6. If you don't see how cheap that was, I don't know what to explain to you. Like, it's just care. Put some effort in. If you're not going to do anything with the direwolves, if they ultimately don't matter, and you're just going to fuck off with them, then don't use them. Just kill Ghost off. Don't show him running into a battle in the front lines. Why, by the way, was he doing that? Why was he not with Jon? Why wasn't he protecting Bran? Anyway, he runs out of the front lines. Then it's obvious that he's dead because they're being attacked by 100,000 zombies. And then in the next episode, his ears like bit off and he's a little bloody. And then Jon just leaves him like, see you, motherfucker. Sorry I didn't pet you. And then the filmmakers say that they couldn't figure out the CGI shot of him petting Ghost. So that's why it wasn't in the episode. And then in the finale, Jon pets Ghost. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. And then I heard that was reused footage from like season 4. So you could do it in season 4, but you couldn't do it now, which means the guy was just lying when he said that they couldn't do it before. Also, how can you not film that? Why can you guys just not get, I don't know, big dogs or wolves, film some scenes with them, and then just use, forced perspective like Lord of the Rings to make them look bigger? Why do they have to be CGI? They don't need to be CG. It's not that I'm a Ghost fanboy. Like, well, you know what, Ghost didn't matter. Well, you know what, the dragons ultimately didn't matter either if it wasn't Drogon. A lot of shit didn't end up matter, You're like, Ghost didn't matter. Well, it's going through the whole show. The fact they didn't give a shit about Ghost and that dynamic between him and Jon. The fact they didn't want to put the money and time into it. And that they didn't want to explore anything with the direwolves and all the Stark kids getting the pups in the early episodes of the show. It just shows some laziness. It just shows a lack of care, and it shows a lack of effort, I think, overall. So that's why I bring up the Ghost thing, because it's just another point to bring up, because it's filled with this stuff. The time jumps show a lack of care. The way they killed off characters, the way things happened so quickly, the way they left so many mysteries still up in the air. I didn't need everything to be answered, but this is how you do a show that sets up a lot of questions. This is the way you do it. This is why Watchmen's such a great book. And I'm quoting Max Landis a little bit, the pervert, in this. In that at the end of Watchmen, there's so many questions raised, right, throughout the book, but you get so many answers. And the questions that are left open just add to the brilliance of what it is. I always like that quote because that's how you wrap something up. There should be a lot of answers at the end of Battlestar Galactica and Lost. And in this show, a lot of answers, and then there should be a few questions left open, a few things left open to interpretation that just make the whole work itself more profound. But all of these shows don't give enough answers, and the answers they do give are hilariously bad, where you could actually come up with something really, really profound and interesting and unique. So my issue isn't that, the Lord of Light stuff is still left open. All of the stuff with the gods, the White Walkers' motivation, all of it's left open. So much of the mythology and the stuff with the gods. And why people are brought back from the dead. Why was Jon Snow brought back from the dead? To kill Dany? Was that what it was all about? People bring that up and they're like, why does that stuff matter to you so much? It's like, well, because that was a part of the show. Yes, they did end up wrapping up the human story and the politics, and at least with that stuff, I can kind of give them a pass. I can't give them a pass for the other stuff because too many questions are left open, which makes me think they never had an answer, and they were waiting for George R. R. Martin to answer it, and they didn't have the balls come up with their own answers or solutions. They were too scared to take a risk and go their own way, take their own path to do the story properly. So it ends up becoming a mess between two visions. One that's trying to stay loyal to the original source material, and then whatever the fuck George R. R. Martin is writing. So Ghost matters, this stuff matters, just because if the finer details, if the smaller things aren't fleshed out, if the things in the background, if the things that are only a few seconds long don't have effort put into them, then that affects the overall show, and that's why the big moments, that's why the payoffs feel less earned and feel they don't have that excitement, they don't have that tension that you used to have every week when the show started, when the credits used to roll. I used to be so tense, like, who's going to die this week? I used to be scared for people. It loses that because if you don't care about the minor details, if you don't want to get the little things right, if you don't care about that, then the big things aren't going to work because all those little things have to work too, and they used to work in the early seasons. An episode like Blackwater doesn't work if you don't get those speeches right. If you don't get those intimate moments right, then the big moment with the wildfire doesn't work. So that's why it's a core problem, because it just affects everything. It trickles down. Maybe you could get away with one or two things like that. Like, okay, well, let's just have a conversation about the Lord of Light where we said, hey, he fucks off and we're never going to get answers. But when you do that with everything, especially Bran and his time travel ability, which is never brought up again, then the entire show falls apart. Everything is diminished. Everything crumbles, everything falls because there's not enough there to hold it up anymore. You realize how empty it is. It's empty calories. It's like eating lettuce.
I do just want to start by saying I know we're following the Game of Thrones panel, which is a fucking nightmare, just objectively. I also know that their showrunners didn't show up because they didn't want to answer questions about the show. So I just want to say that I am not one of the creators of Game of Thrones, but I am the creator of other TV shows, so feel free to ask me any Game of Thrones questions you guys have throughout the night. I'm not an expert. I didn't read the books, but I watched the show, so I can give you my insights and thoughts just as to how they pulled it off.
What series finale is going to be more satisfying, Preacher or Game of Thrones?
I think, hopefully, I won't be, I'm here at least, so I think that's a good sign.